welcome. I think this is the first Tuesday night talk of the season, so welcome everybody. Do we have enough chairs or do we need more chairs set out? We have more chairs. There's also space in front. Don't be shy. But welcome to the first Tuesday night talk of the season. This week we have Chugach Imaq, and Raven, I think, is going to start us off by telling us about the group and what they're working on.
Yeah, there's going to be a few presenters.
Okay, so you got it.
Yeah, that works. We're just going to be switching spots, but we have Chugach Regional Resources Commission, which is myself. I'm the Tribal Fish and Wildlife Director there, and I run the Tribal Fish and Wildlife Department, which includes our fisheries program, our marine mammal program, our wildlife program, and our subsistence program. We also have ADF&G, the Pennsylvania Sound Science Center, the Marine Mammal Commission, Indigenous Sentinels Network, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, National Park Service, and Native Village of Imaq, as well as we just recently added, but I forgot to get the logo up there, is NOAA Stranding Network is also going to participate in this presentation as well. So thank you for hopping in last minute, Barbara. And I didn't have your name on there too, but Barbara is also going to be on here presenting. So first, I just want to talk mainly about the region and what this is. And so from the Chugach Regional Resources Commission standpoint, the Chugach region includes the 7 tribal communities of Port Graham, Nanwalek, Chiniga, Seward, Titlik, Valdez, and Cordova. And what we've identified as our traditional boundaries is very similar to the Chugach Alaska Corporation boundaries. And so it's a little bigger than that, actually, because we've designated this tribal conservation district, which is our traditional lands that we use for subsistence. So it kind of includes all the way to right by IC Bay, all the way out half of Kachemak Bay, up along that mountain range that follows by Seward over to Anchorage and up around Titlik and Valdez. So the past, we as Chugach people are sea people. Our lives are sustained by the sea, which plays an important role in our history and future. Marine mammals are embedded in our spirit, food, clothing, culture, song, and even more than that, our daily lives. These stories are told from lived experiences by our tribal elders and subsistence hunters, and each one of us brings our observations, skills, and knowledge to share. It is with many voices that our marine mammal resources are shared. And so I wanted to invite Mark King up here, who is the Native Village of Imaq subsistence harvest boat captain, to speak a little bit about the Native Village of Iaq's research and monitoring efforts with marine mammals in our area.
Thank you. Yeah, I started working with marine mammals, particularly sea otters, the year after the Exxon Valdez oil spill. And we had a lot of sea otters that were in recovery from the place over in Valdez where they were bringing them back to getting the contamination off of them, then turn them loose. And what they were doing is they were bringing them over into our area over here to turn them loose. So we had a lot of sea otters, and we weren't oiled. And so the tribe decided that we needed to get involved with marine mammal management. And so I was put on task, the Alaska Sea Otter Commission. It started out as just the Sea Otter Commission, not the Sea Lion Commission. That came later, years later. But so then we needed to develop a management plan for sea otters. So I ended up, and we're an area where it was easy to study sea otters because in other villages in Alaska, they were a long ways away. Ours were right out the front door. And we had watched these otters come into the bay here in 1972, and we had a really good clam. We're known as the clam capital of the world for razor clams and cockles and butter clams. And then we had this huge Dungeness fishery where we harvest 1 million pounds of Dungeness inside of town, out here. But in 72, the otters first came in. Everybody was all excited about them. And, how cute they are, In the past, I can remember when I was about 9 or 10 years old, my dad was trapping on the outside of Hinchinbrook Island and came across a sea otter and skinned it out, brought it to town, met with Fish and Game, got all the permits, and they put it in the museum. It's still here somewhere. I don't know. The tribe's got it now.
Behind my desk.
Yeah. But I mean, that's how rare they were. They made a big deal out of one sea otter. And then, so in my later years, before I got involved with TASC, I had worked with the state of Alaska as a youngster, putting antennas up and helping them with their Boston whalers on Willoughby Island on Montague, catching sea otters to transplant down south. They took them all the way as far as Oregon, I think. But we would catch them in king salmon gill nets in these back bays and stuff on Montague Island. And they had put 2 cinder blocks on each end of the net. The nets were about 75 fathoms long. But the lead line was neutral buoyant, so that when the otter would get caught in it, it could get up to the cork line and wrap around the cork line. And so we'd catch them at night, go out there, and they'd tranquilize them. And then we had pens to put them in out there. And then we'd either bring them in by boat, but mostly by airplane, into Imaq Lake. And we had pens set up in Imaq Lake. We fed them best stuff you can imagine, abalone and scallops and all this good stuff. And then they would fly them out of here to wherever they were going, But anyway, that's how I first got involved with sea otters. And but then when it come to when I was on the commission, and we needed to develop these plans for tribal management of sea otters, and so I started doing a population surveys. I had transects all the way up the bay around right in the local area here, where we'd go and count the sea otters 2 or 3 times a year. And then I did a pup survey to see how many pups there were, and then another survey on top of that to see what the survival rate of pups were, to see if how many survived. And I did run into one female with 2 pups only one time, but it was common to have a female with a newborn pup with another pup that's a yearling coming in and trying to take over, and it was always a big ruckus with, her trying to get the other one away. And so I did that, and then I did winter mortality surveys. We had a situation where we had, it was exactly 10 years after the oil spill. 60 Minutes was coming to town, Dan Ravner and those folks, and we had been having this die-off of sea otters. So I had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go down to the harbor by the other science center down there, the headland, and clean all the dead sea otters off the beach. And at one time, I had 20 in the back of my truck. And what was going on is the sea otters were eating the outfall from the processors, and they had this Anaciscus codworm because they were feeding on pollock and peacod, and so all that stuff was getting in their guts. So they're getting real heavy loads of parasites and killing them. And then they were also getting bone impactions from the carcasses that they were eating because it wasn't in their diet naturally. And so we identified this problem and worked with Fish and Wildlife Service out of Anchorage. And Linda Commercy was a veterinarian back then that I worked with. And I told her, I said, I don't want to read about this on the front page of the Anchorage paper. And anyway, nothing ever came of it as far as publicizing it, but I didn't want the fishermen to get a black eye. and the Science Center, because the Science Center is the one that claimed that they found those pollock over in Bainbridge, over by Seward, and we're saying, oh yeah, these fishermen are hurting, and we found these pollock, and we got these draggers coming, and the processors are working all winter and stuff like that. So the tribe worked with Fish and Wildlife, with the city of Corova, to take care of the problem. What we decided to do was take all the outfall that was coming out of the processors and run it through a steam chamber that would cook it and kill all the parasites in the outfall. And we also made them do a finer grind on the waste that was going out of the processor, so they wouldn't get these bone impactions. But I think that the worst year, I think I picked up 130 dead sea otters, and we salvaged about half of the hides. If I got right on them and got them skinned, their bellies would be green, but if I got the salt on them, they wouldn't slip. And so Monica Rydell ended up with most all those sea otters that we salvaged. And I wondered why the sea otters that were killed during the oil spill, there was thousands of them, why they didn't try and salvage any of those hides, but everybody said, oh, they're too far gone. But that's what I thought about these sea otters, that are too far gone, but they're still able to salvage a lot of hides out of them. And so I would do this winter mortality survey, and I'd walk 30 miles of beach every spring, and I'd get the vacuum for proof of sex, and then I'd take the skulls, physically take them off the beach, so that when I come back through the next year, if I found a skull, it was added to the list of otters. And so that was always exciting, because I found all kinds of things when I was doing the mortality survey, walking all those miles of beaches. And then I'm kind of losing track here, but then we got involved with the sea lions shortly after that, because there wasn't any native sea lion commission. So we called it the Stellar Sea Lion CR Commission after that. And then so we started doing work with stellar sea lions. And what we did there is we did a survey with all the elders. We went to Lake Chiniga and the elders around Cordova and sat down with them and got the information of where they had sighted haulouts and rookeries for sea lions. And then we made a map of all this stuff. And then we hired Mikey Weber and Jack Hopkins to go from Cordova to Titlic to Chiniga, down to McLeod Harbor, around Montague Island, all the way down to Kayak, and then back to Cordova. And we did it in a week. And they had these bought them real fancy cameras, gave them the permits to get on the rookeries and stuff. And they found tags, branded sea lions from Russia, from down in southeast. I can't think of the big one down there where they're doing a lot of tagging. But anyway, the tribe proved that we could do this. We did it for $14,000. And for the National Marine Fisheries Service, with Tiglax or whatever the name of that boat was that they take out of Homer, to go all the way down to Aleutians and stuff like that, it would cost them $500,000, by the time they did a survey, what we did in such a short period of time. And the state was really happy that we were doing this, because we were helping them with data on the brands that they didn't have any ability to get out there to look for themselves, So with the local knowledge and a fast boat, we were able to do that survey on sea lions. And kind of in a nutshell, I'm not going to be nice about it, but what we did too good of a job. They cut the funding. Fish and Wildlife Service, I don't know about National Marine Fisheries Service, but it was like they were telling us what we needed to do. And we had the idea, well, we're going to do the most common sense thing when it comes to these surveys. And we understand that you got these protocols for the whole state, from California all the way up here, of how to count sea otters. And so we had Fish and Wildlife Service come in to train me. They had us so many meters of line with a buoy on it, so we could judge how far off the beach we should go to count sea otters. I said, yeah, but Orca Inlet, there's not 30 feet of water in the whole bay. I said, the sea otters aren't going to be in that 50-meter section of beach. They're going to be all the way across the bay. Yeah, this is the protocol. And I said, well, it's not going to be our protocol, because we want to know how many sea otters are here, you know. So anyway, I got in an argument with the guy. I told him, I said, okay, get your tallywhackers out. I said, we're going to go straight across the bay. I said, I bet you there's 350 otters between here and Bud Bay. I don't think so, but that isn't the protocol. But anyway, you go ahead and do it, you know. Sure enough, there was 342 otters, you know, going across the bay. So when we developed our system, we stuck with the same system. We had 2 observers, 1 on each side of the boat, somebody running the boat, and we would count the otters that we could see, you know, as we were going. You know, of course, some of them are diving, but you're going slow enough that they got to come up for air. And so we use that same system, and all that data is somewhere. The Sea Otter Commission has it, the tribe has it somewhere. But it was a good project. And then it just kind of went by the wayside with lack of funding, and the Sea Otter Commission moved, and the Sea Land Commission moved over to Old Harbor, and I don't know what happened. You know, since then I tried to get a hold of the director for the last 5 years, and she won't return my calls. But I was also on the ground floor of the SEAL Commission when it was developed. Monica Rydell, myself, and a couple other guys from Southeast helped get that thing up and going too. So I do have quite a bit of experience with marine mammals in this area. People are still calling me, oh, we got an otter down here. And, oh, I can't help you, I'm sorry. So I have one more story. My daughter come up, she lives in British Columbia in Haida Gwaii on Queen Charlotte Island. She come up to visit me. I'm out fishing and, you know, no sleep, come home, go to bed, and I hear this bawling and black. I jumped up, what the heck's going on? And my daughter said, oh, the Sea Life Center called up and said, you take care of seals. He said, I got it downstairs in the bathtub. I said, oh, thank you. That's all I needed. A seal in the bathtub downstairs. So, anyway.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, having Mark here, we really wanted to represent, you know, as we talked about research and monitoring in the past, present, and to the future. So, really having him be the staple for this community, who's really been a part of almost every single marine mammal research effort from historical efforts that have been done. So, I'm really thankful that he could be here today, kind of last minute, to come and present. So, thank you so much. So now as we go into the present, I have a couple organizations and agencies going to come up and present on the efforts that have been done. Let's just say in like the past 20, 30 years, and how those, from the past 30 years, and how that's kind of represented what's being done for research and monitoring today. So I will invite up Heather to present on Gulf Watch next, and we'll just keep passing it off.
Thanks so much. My name is Heather Coletti. I'm a marine ecologist with the National Park Service, but I'm also part of Gulf Watch Alaska, primarily the nearshore component. But yeah, Raven asked us to talk about past, present, and future, and I don't think we can at least with this program in particular, obviously it started with the oil spill. And one of the impetus to creating a long-term monitoring program was the lack of data that the agencies and that monitor these trust species and these ecosystems had. And so it was built from this idea that we were going to look at recovery from injured resources over time, but then also eventually knowing that, with time, the potential effects of the oil spill would dissipate and what else might be impacting these resources as they try to recover from that initial perturbation. And so there's a lot of history of research, monitoring plans, different monitoring plans, and things going back and forth. But finally, in 2012, the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Trustee Council funded what we call Gulf Watch Alaska. And it was always meant to be a 20-year program. So sunsetting in 2031 was the original plan. I don't know if we'll make it, but because it's always funding dependent, and it has these three components. Pelagic, which is dealing with I have another slide, but the pelagic is really the offshore. So that food web that's starts with the phytoplankton. So your forage fish, whales, seabirds. The nearshore component, and this is where I work, where the primary production comes from the macroalgae. And it's your benthic invertebrates, clams, mussels, chitons, to sea ducks, shorebirds like black oyster catchers, and of course sea otters. And then the environmental drivers was those oceanographic conditions. So phytoplankton, temperature, of course, salinity, and other physical processes in the northern Gulf of Alaska. And so we've been working together as a collective with all these different PIs and all these different projects really since 2012. And again, our intent was to monitor the recovery of these injured resources. However, as many of you know, we had a marine heat wave. And this speaks to sort of the value of long-term monitoring programs in general. How valuable that data becomes when you have a large-scale or even a small-scale event that is a perturbation to the system. And so we were able to look across these food webs and these critters and these ecosystems to see how the different species interacted and responded to this large-scale heat wave. Because this heat wave was not only documented in the offshore waters, but we also documented it coming into the intertidal. We actually have temperature loggers across the Gulf, and it was hot water across the whole Gulf. But in contrast, many of you know, forage fish species declined across the Gulf, resulting in declines and large die-offs of seabirds, primarily common murres. They also documented declines in humpback whale, primarily reproductive success, but they've recently come out with work that there was quite a bit of high adult mortality. And then in contrast to the nearshore food web, we actually did see some declines in sea stars. I don't know, some of you have heard of sea star wasting. It's maybe exacerbated by the heat wave, but that was a perturbation to this system as well. Those are apex predators. We documented declines in macroalgae in the intertidal, also concurrent with the heat wave. But not everything declined. Because that macroalgae declined and because sea stars were significantly reduced, mussels actually did really well post-heat wave. There was, our abundance went up, sizes distributions went up, the size of the beds. So the beds were able to extend into the low intertidal, where normally sea stars usually kind of crop them off down there. So we had a lot of prey in the system because mussels, sea ducks eat mussels, otters eat mussels. So we had an increase in prey. So in contrast to some of the seabirds that rely on forage fish, the sea ducks that are mostly benthic invertebrate eaters that eat mussels did fine during the heat wave. And the same can be true, is said for sea otters, where their population stayed stable across lots of these areas that we're looking. We did see shifts in their diet. And so what really struck us from all of this was the perturbation, the type of perturbation, where it happens, when it happens, not everything is going to be impacted the same way. And that's really the value of looking at these systems holistically and across time and space. Because this was a totally unanticipated event. And, yep.
Well, that was actually a perfect introduction to what I was going to touch on. So my name's Anne. I work here at the Science Center. I'm a research associate. And so here at the Science Center, our mission is to advance community resilience and the understanding and sustainable use of ecosystems. So basically that means that all of our research, or the focus of all our work, is to understand how a place can maintain both its environment and economy for generations to come. And so that's really our goal here at the Science Center. And to that end, we conduct research in Prince William Sound, on the Copper River Delta, in the Gulf of Alaska and beyond. And we work in both freshwater and marine environments. And so I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of we do a lot of different research here, from like the physical properties of the ocean all the way up to, salmon and seabirds. So this is just like a very brief overview of the work that seems the most relevant to this program. So fast and furious. One project that I thought I would touch on is long-term monitoring of oceanographic conditions in Prince William Sound. So this is a project that's part of Gulf Watch Alaska that Heather was just talking about. This is one project in the physical drivers component. So Dr. Rob Campbell has been monitoring the oceanographic conditions in Prince William Sound for over 10 years now. And as part of that work, he also put together a 40-year time series of historical data, just trying to get a bigger picture of the longer term trends of these physical parameters in Prince William Sound over time. And he's actually out on the water right now completing the circuit that's on that map. Those are all his sampling locations in Prince William Sound that he monitors almost monthly from about March through November every year. Another component of our research that we do here is the Herring Research and Monitoring Program, which is another Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Trustee funded program that's now part of the long-term research and monitoring program that Heather was talking about. And as part of that research, we have done juvenile and adult herring surveys. We've studied overwinter survival and recruitment of juvenile herring. We've looked at predation, disease, herring migration and movements into and out of Prince William Sound. And then we currently have a study going on that's looking at herring interactions with salmon, pollock, and other ground fish. And then we also have a study that's looking at long-term monitoring of marine birds and marine mammals during the fall and winter. This project has been going on since the mid-2000s, and we've documented at-sea marine bird and marine mammal distribution and density since about 2007. We've also specifically examined seabird and forage fish interactions, as well as foraging dynamics between seabirds and humpback whales. So we have done a lot of different data collection and research projects, and all of this work has been, collaborative and working with other PIs and, projects within Gulf Watch Alaska and herring and long-term monitoring. And so nothing that's like we are monitoring mammals specifically, but all of these other components that impact marine mammals. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, so hello, my name is Mike Rayberg. I'm from the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. As a part of the Division of Wildlife, we have a small marine mammal group. While Fish and Game doesn't manage marine mammals, we do research to help support management and help our management agencies make good decisions. And part of the work that we've been doing is monitoring sea lions in the Chugach region, stellar sea lions. We've been at this for probably 30 years or so. Started doing collections back in the 70s. We started branding sea lions in the late 90s. And we've our most recent work that we've been up to is we're catching adult female sea lions because we're trying to look at some of the effects of the marine heat wave that came through. So yeah, all the work that we do is collaborative. There's aerial surveys every year in the summer that NOAA does. Try to do it annually. The Sea Life Center monitors the rookeries at Chiswell Islands off Seward with a video camera. And brand resites between Southeast Alaska and Russia are done by a number of organizations. To try to get a handle on what you get from branding and resiting is that you can tell how survival is going. You can tell how reproduction is going. And you can tell where sea lions are moving around too. So, moving on. So the marine heat wave came through. And we noticed first, the first signal was that the pup production at the rookeries dropped. You know, when rookeries are counted, you count how many adults you see and how many pups you see. And all of a sudden that ratio got skewed in 2017. There's way less pups than there would have been compared to adults. Then in 2018, the Alaska Sea Life Center, remember they've got that video camera, they're watching sea lions year round. They noticed that 20% of their females didn't show up again after the winter at the rookery. So that was a year over year, 20% drop in adult female sea lion survival. And that's a big deal. That's a big change. That was a big deal. So we got together some funding with NIBS. We put together some collaborations with Native Village of Imaq and with the Chugach tribe of Kodiak to start catching some adult female sea lions and see if we could tease out anything that was causing this drop in survival. The basic questions are they getting sick? Where are they eating? And where are they feeding? So to do this, we started in 2018 on Perry Island, catching sea lions using a capture dart. This wasn't possible until 2010 when some vets figured out drugs that would not kill sea lions when we tried to catch them. We use a dart chemical combination that's safe. If the sea lion swims away before we can get our hands on it, it basically just lollygags in the water for an hour, blowing bubbles and breathing until it spontaneously recovers. We've actually followed them doing this to make sure that we could have pure hearts after we do these. So most of the time we get them, we'll get our hands on them. And if we don't, we try to dart them with a reversal so they can swim off. And if not, we try to monitor them, but we're pretty confident that this is a very safe way to catch sea lions. We have lots of GoPro video that this guy likes to record, but since it's all set to music, like hardcore metal, I didn't bring any with me. But yeah. Anyways, in this region, we've been doing it at Perry Island and Glacier Island because they're accessible, and also because there's actually sea lions there in October. Not all the haulouts are occupied in the early winter. So we have some results from our work that we've already done. There is a presentation that looked a lot like this at the Memorial Gathering a year and a half ago, where we described this project to the CRRC gathering. I'm just going to go through a few of the results that we got from the samples that we took from sea lions and some things that we learned about what they're eating. So we wanted to check to see what might be making them sick. So we chopped for HPAI, the SARS virus, bird flu, whatever you'd like to call it. We found that none of them were infected with that. None of them had distemper, which is just what it sounds like. It's just in seals instead of in dogs or whatnot. Kathy, could I trouble you to pronounce the next word? Yes, we had Kathy is a veterinary pathologist that we work with, and who keeps close tabs on all the findings that we have. One female was infected with this, and when it came to other types of disease that might affect their reproduction or might affect their survival, we didn't see any evidence of anything. When we do our next set of captures in Prince William Sound next month, we're also going to look for tularemia, which is a new disease that we're going to start monitoring for. So nothing jumped out saying, here's what's been killing sea lions. Now, where there's evidence that they had been carrying saxitoxin, the thing that causes paralytic shellfish poisoning. Of the live sea lions that we caught, and we were lucky enough to have that urinated while we had them in our hands, 2 of the 20 had detectable levels of it, but it was all well below the level of concern. The alert level or the concern level is 800 nanograms per gram. The most we saw was like 190, and it was only in 2. So yes, they're carrying it, but we're catching them alive. So we also looked for the PSP in their scats. We go around, and Matt with the NVE go around collecting scats off the rocks around Prince William Sound. We tested them and found in the fall, half of the scats were positive for saxitoxin, and 83% of the scats in the summer were also positive. That's not a typo, it's 83% of 83. But again, the ones that were positive were well below the level of concern, but it's at a higher level than we'd seen before. It's not clear if that matters. So we are seeing that they are picking it up, but again, it's still at low levels. Now, this is the fun part. These data just came in like last week, so we haven't really done anything much at all. So the other reason we collect scats is so that we can do genetic analysis to see what that sea lion was eating. We collected scats in the summer, the fall, and the winter. And they've been collected from Glacier Island, Perry Island, I think down near Procession Rocks, and Matt at NVE is going to tell you they're getting out to get scats at a new site that we can't reach at Fish and Game. So we're really grateful to have Matt's team going out to cover this sound nice and comprehensively. So yeah, if you're a sea lion, they're most. So what this tells us is how many of the scats. What's the relative abundance by the scats that we've collected? We analyzed 250 scats. Yeah, mostly pink salmon, some chums, Chinook, and sockeye. I don't think that we saw any coho. If we did, it was like less than 1%. So the genetic results gave us a whole list of different types of fish. We just kind of focused on salmon for this one. I don't know how this reflects to the abundance of fish in the sound or what the fisheries are taking. Is this sound like about what Prince William would reflect Prince William Sound's fish? Mm-hmm. Would you say? Okay. All right. Well, sea lions are taking what they can, where they can, which is basically what we see everywhere else that we've looked at them. And this kind of breaks down the general types of things that we're finding in the scats. Lots of fish. Worms were very common. We saw squid and octopus, which we had seen evidence of before using other techniques. Mussels and other. Other is the fun one. So I decided I wanted to see what the other is, because this is a genetic analysis. They throw all the scats they throw the material into the machine and it spits out a huge list of what it finds. So curious what other is. This is other. The things that are showing up in sea lion scats include bird, insect, all kinds of things are showing up in the scats that they produce. Are they eating birds? Are they eating all these things? Well, some of these might actually have been inside the stomachs of the fish that the sea lions were eating. But this is the kind of result that we get from a genetics analysis of trying to find out what diet is. The old way to do it was to look for fish bones and identify fish from that. So this is giving us a much cooler insight into what sea lions are consuming and what their role is in the ecosystem. Spider, some of these I wonder about, and it's going to be really fun to tease these out, especially with the geneticists, to see if there's any asterisks on any of these. In any event, this is very new, so I don't have much to say.
If they consume the bird.
That's right.
Birds ate the spider.
It could be like a song. The birds ate the spider. So this will be with my colleagues and hopefully picking people's brains like Matt's and others and people who are around the sound. We can make sense of what the results that we're seeing. Okay, now we had a bit of a technology change. I was going to show you a map because we also track them with satellite tags. We've got satellite tags out on 32 of the sea lions right now. We're going to put another 10 to 12 out next month. Put a satellite tag on their head. It runs from October through May or June or July if we're lucky, and then it falls off when they molt their fur. If you would like to see our tracking maps, I did get a little modern because I can't present a map here. I can give you one of these. So if you want, I can hook you up later or send you guys a link to be able to open up our maps on your own, and you can see all the places that our tracked sea lions have gone since 2018 from both Kodiak and from Prince William Sound. And I think that's the update that we have for you guys this year.
Can you tell us how far they go?
The finding from last fall is we captured out in Kodiak. We captured at Flat Island in the Chugach region, and we also captured at Sea Otter Island, which is in Kodiak, right off Chugach Island. 3 of the sea lions from Kodiak swam clear across to Cape St. Elias to spend the winter at Wingham Island, Cape St. Elias. One of them went almost all the way down to Dry Bay, which is way down the outside coast. And then 2 of them swam all the way back to Kodiak to breed. So we're wondering what is so special that you'd want to swim 400 miles each way with a pup, because they would have had their pup from last year with them when they were doing this. We're not sure what to figure out from that. But yeah, that was the striking part. The other 2 things that we did notice is that sea lions in Prince William Sound, they don't go very far. They don't swim very far, but they swim really deep. They'll go to 500 meters deep, 1,500 feet deep when they're foraging. Sea lions in Kodiak don't go very deep. They might only go 100 meters deep because they're out on the continental shelf. But they'll swim 100 miles offshore and forage and then swim 100 miles back. So Prince William Sound sea lions are spending their effort getting deep to find close-in prey, and Kodiak sea lions are spending their energy and effort going far, but getting easier to attain prey. So, anyways, that's all I have for this update. Thank you.
So, oh wow, there it goes. All right, super fast. Oh gosh. All right, there we go. Nice and slow. So this is Kayak Island, Cape St. Elias. As Mike was saying, this is one of the spots that NVE was interested in getting more sea lion data, and so we were able to handle the data collection toward the study out there at Cape St. Elias. This is high tide. It's obviously pretty tough to get there, but low tide, you can actually walk all the way out to the haul out. And yeah, so Native Village VIAC is a co-PI on Mike's study there, and you heard all about the cool data that's being collected. And we're still collecting scat samples, and there's still lots more analysis to come, so it's pretty neat. Stay tuned on all of that. NV is also able, because we're here all the time in the Sound, we're able to get out opportunistically and get some of those tough to recover wintertime samples from Glacier and Perry. So opportunistically, when the weather works out and we get a window, we'll go out and collect some samples to kind of fill those temporal data gaps that exist in that data set. And also with some of our other fisheries work, as many of you are familiar with, we're crossing the Sound all the time, headed to East Chamois. So a lot of times we can just pop in and get some samples too. So we're able to help the state with their sample collection. It's pretty cool. Also, NVE staff has been assisting the state with their adult sea lion capture. I'm sorry about all of this. And so we've been going out on the research cruises. Anyways, with the state of Alaska, and we have one coming up in October. And Mike told you all about that. So getting to live handle and tag and get some pretty awesome dive depth CTD type of data, satellite tracking data off these sea lions is pretty cool experience, and it's a great opportunity to build capacity for that type of work within the tribe. And the state has been a great partner on that. Also, we have assisted the local stranding coordinator, Raven, with a recent whale stranding. So getting some more experience with that. And again, many of you know me as a fish guy. Caitlin McKinstreet is our marine biologist. She's unfortunately attending another symposium down in Ketchikan right now, so she's not able to be here. So I'm kind of filling in her stead. MD is excited to get our marine mammal program up and running again, following in the footsteps of Mark. And it's a pretty exciting time. So more to come on all of that when the data keeps coming in. And maybe we'll get another presentation going later on this year at the Tuesday Night Lecture Series to update you on some more of the scat stuff. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for bearing with all of us here. I'm Ben Weitzman. I'm a sea otter biologist at Fish and Wildlife Service. Presenting on behalf of our team, Alice Garrett, who left already, is the lead for our Marine Mammals Management Program based in Anchorage. Amy Kirkham is here from our Proactive Conservation Program and sits within Marine Mammals Management. And then myself and Paul Schutte are on the Walrus and Sea Otter program there. I threw our mission up here for everybody because I think a lot of what I hear about Fish and Wildlife Service is many folks don't really know what we do or what our purpose is. And here in Alaska, we are tasked with the management of marine mammals being walrus, polar bear, and sea otter. For the Gulf of Alaska, it's really just sea otters. And our mission is to work with others to conserve, protect, and enhance the fish, wildlife, plants, and habitats that we're entrusted with for the benefit of the American people. And we do this work all across the state of Alaska, from Attu all the way down to Dixon Entrance and up into Bristol Bay, wherever sea otters occur. We have 3 stalks: the southwest stalk, the south central, and the southeast. Now, the south central stalk is almost exactly aligned with the Chugach region as they define their tribal conservation district. So it makes this a really nice place for us to work. In each of these stalks, we're going out conducting population surveys that we're looking to get a sense of estimates of abundance and distribution. We might do population health assessments when we're doing captures or biosampling subsistence harvested animals or responding to strandings that occur. Though I put an asterisk on there because due to dwindling staffing and support within our program, we've really been reliant on our partners in stranding response from the Alaska Sea Life Center and the Marine Mammal Stranding Group here in Alaska. The population assessments that we do are really our bread and butter. We're mandated to put out species stock assessment reports and status assessments for our listed stocks. And we really should be doing this about every 3 years. Though 2023 was the first time we published them since 2014. So we're really in this past, present, future game. We're catching up from a lot of what had been neglected in the past. In the last decade, we've really relied on partners to complete our survey efforts. So throughout South Central, this has been close collaboration through Gulf Watch Alaska and Department of Interior level collaboration with the Park Service and USGS partners, which you heard about from Heather. The Stranding Response Program alongside NIMS was really going during an unusual mortality event that we had in Ketchikan Bay going up through 2014-16. And since then, our stranding response has basically dwindled to almost non-existent. And that's something that we're really hoping in the future that we can work together to rectify. And then going back into deep time, as we heard Mark talk about, at one point there was co-management for sea otters, but that has been discontinued, unfortunately. Really, it collapsed. We did have a biosampling program that yielded quite a few studies using whiskers and tissues sampled from sea otters, but that also discontinued and lapsed. And we also developed a marking, tagging, reporting program that requires all harvested sea otters to be documented by the Fish and Wildlife Service and receive a tag, whether that tagger is local in the community or directly from Fish and Wildlife. That program began in 1989 and is still ongoing today. Part of why I'm showing you what went on and what changed is because we're a very different group now than we were 10 years ago. Different emphases and different capacities. In South Central Alaska, in our Chugach region, we were fortunate enough to have a standardized method of the intensive search unit, this ISU aerial survey method, going back to about 1999. These were surveys that were flown at 300 feet above sea level. We'd have an observer looking out the window and marking on paper where they saw sea otters. By the time I was getting trained, we were doing it in ArcPad. By the time ArcPad was no longer supported, I went back to doing it on paper. Needless to say, we've advanced now into this new age of photo-based surveys, which I won't get into the nitty-gritty of, but it's really been an evolution for us looking towards the future of how we can harness new technologies to more efficiently and more safely survey. Now in South Central, we had the benefit of our USGS collaborators putting together this compilation of surveys that occurred between 2014 and 2019, and they were able to help us get an updated stock assessment for our 2023 report. This was largely supported by data from the Gulf Watch Alaska program, and I've shown you now a plot here of the abundance estimates for Chugach Bay in yellow, Kenai Fjords in blue, and Western Prince William Sound in green. And really the take-home message here is that generally sea otters were increasing and stable in most of the areas we were looking. It was interesting in our 2023 stock assessment, we only had Western Prince William Sound up until 2017, which is actually quite a low estimate. And then the most recent survey in 2022 was one of the highest estimates yet. So we're really excited to see what things look like going forward for the Chugach region. And the distribution side is really fascinating when you put all these surveys together. Sea otters do occur all throughout the Chugach region, up into just about every fjord. All the nooks and crannies are filled in. And throughout the last 20 years, we've had some pretty reliable hotspots that have emerged in the South Central region. Chugach Bay being one, College Fjord, Orca Inlet, and the moraines and Kenai Fjords, which I'll show you in a minute. And the densities are drastically different here. Overall, in the Chugach region, you have a density of about 2 sea otters per kilometer squared. But in Orca Inlet, we have a density of 19.93, about 20 sea otters per kilometer squared. And what's fascinating is that sea otters have occurred in Orca Inlet at that density since 1988. They have really been at one of the highest observed densities for a consistent amount of time, and that's pretty interesting. Comparatively, Chugach Bay, which is a pretty high density system, is at about 6.37 otters per kilometer squared. So I mentioned these hotspots. These are just some photos that were taken on these surveys. These ones from Hinchinbrook, Orca Inlet, and College Fjord I took in 2014 when I flew the survey out here. And there's actually, it's hard to see, but several hundred sea otters hauled out right along the shore. I don't know if you can see the mouse on there. Right along the shore here, and then up in this one along here. And it wouldn't be uncommon in Orca Inlet to see them by the droves of hundreds. And when they're foraging in that system in the soft sediment, it looks like a dredge going across the bottom. There's plumes of sediment coming up. It's remarkable. This photo from Lower Cook Inlet in 2017 just really, I mean, it blew my mind, to put it lightly, was looking out the plane and seeing lily pads of sea otters in groups of 50 to 200 scattered all throughout Chugach Bay. And the groups were so sensitive to the plane that I couldn't even get up and over them to get an accurate count because they would all spook and take off porpoising swimming. These systems that occur here that I've sort of highlighted as our hotspots are also wide open, tidally driven systems, predominantly soft sediment, and they're so different from the rocky reef, kelp forest ecosystems that we typically think about for sea otters. Could that habitat difference have something to do with the high densities that we're seeing in these areas? Another interesting feature of these hotspots, as I mentioned, are the glacial moraines. This panorama is showing in a northwestern fjord, looking out into Harris Bay and then out into the Pacific, the long spit that extends there with Home Cove right on the left-hand side. This is just a really neat system because the otters really do concentrate around the moraines, because otherwise it's hundreds to thousands of feet deep in the fjords. And so they concentrate where the prey is most available. You also have high current flows over the areas, and these hotspots do seem to be fairly persistent over time. From a management perspective, this is quite interesting because it allows us to look at populations that have been stable, but maybe like Kenai Fjords at a relatively low density. These moraines and lagoons would be our areas of greatest interest if we were interested in conservation, in future monitoring efforts, or folks were interested in designating tourism zones versus harvest zones. There are habitat attributes that sea otters are attracted to. And so really what I want to drive home here is that Fish and Wildlife Service is dependent on partnerships to complete our mission. We always have been, and we know that we need to be going forward. We work very closely with our Department of Interior partners, USGS and the Park Service, but we're really looking to figure out who our other partners need to be. Knowing that the tribes are one that has been missing for quite a long time, but what other groups, what other nonprofits, what other agencies like our sister agencies, NIMS, others might be good partners to start to fill in the gaps and see us not lapse on our reports another 10 years. As I mentioned, we're really catching up from being overdue on surveys and assessments, having a functioning stranding response program, and very eager to work with our partners to figure out a path forward. I mentioned our stock assessment reports that came out in 2023, and those were the first since 2014. Yet, despite that, some parts of the Chugach still have remained unsurveyed for over 10 years. Eastern Prince William Sound, right here outside of Cordova, being one of them, and the outer Gulf Coast since about 2000. And so this is just a map showing kind of the current state of our aerial surveys that are done in conjunction between Fish and Wildlife Service, USGS, the Park Service. And what we really hope for the future is that Chugach Regional Resources Commission is going to be another member of the team, helping us to complete the eastern and northern Prince William Sound range in 2025, and then looking to develop a survey that could fill in the Controller Bay area that hasn't been done in over 24 years. And perhaps that's where we have room to also work with our other colleagues from the state and other federal agencies. Very brief overview, but just wanted to show you some data and talk a bit about our history. I'll pass it off there. Thank you.
I start choking. Hi, I'm Barbara Mahoney, and I'm with NOAA Fisheries, and I'd like to give an update on our marine mammal health and stranding response program. And our new partner is the Chugach Regional Resources Commission, and we're glad to have Raven and her team join us. And anyway, here's our stranding team. We have Dr. Mandy Keel, she's a stranding coordinator. We have Sadie Wright, Kim, Ron Syrian, and then myself. And that looks like a pretty red face. It's not that red on my screen. But anyway, I'm usually embarrassed, but not like that. But anyway, and Mandy and Sadie and Kim are in Juneau, and I am in the Anchorage field office. I did want to show this, and I show this with my stranding program, about the remoteness of the coastal areas of Alaska. And there's a lot of marine mammals in Alaska, and there's a lot of coast, more than the continental U.S., but there's so little coverage with road systems. There's and everything's pretty remote and hard to get to. And then here's our picture of our stranding partners. We have the North Borough as a partner up in the Arctic, up at Ukjavik. We have the University and the Sea Grant program. They're out in Nome and Dillingham. We have St. Paul has an agreement out there with, as well as, Sunak tribe in Kodiak, a lot of people in Southeast. And we have, and then the new partner here is in Chugach. So they have about 18 agreements. And these are, we're very excited about this, and we deal with all stranded marine mammals. These can be alive and dead. I did want to, you've seen this picture before, and you'll see it probably again, but reminder, South Central Alaska has 64%, just over 470,000 people in the state's population, which is under 750. But you can still see there's a lot of open areas here. This Chugach Regional Resources Commission includes these 7 listed villages, but also Whittier. And these, we're very excited because this has been a lot of coastal area, and a lot of activity with boats and planes and fishing, but not a lot of reports. So we're very excited to have a partner here in this region. This is strain reports from the past 6 years, from 2018 to 2023. And it shows, we have 105 confirmed marine mammals. That's about just under 18 per year. We have 1 harbor porpoise, 1 minke, 1 fur seal, 2 sperms, 5 greys, 6 humpbacks, 9 identified whales, 10 harbor seals, and I'll continue on with my 12 Days of Christmas. And also, though, we have 69 stellar sea lions. So you can see there's a big effort. And some of you might know that NOAA has been coming to Cordova to do surveys specifically around the Copper River Delta area, but the stellar sea lions are stranded elsewhere as well.
And a recent beaked whale.
Oh yeah, sorry, the one beaked whale. We'll blame Mandy on this map.
It was new.
That was brand new, right? Right. And this is just to show us the data that we're collecting. We get the data numbers provided for each year that we have, and a number for that year. We have our confidence. We have a common name. The observation date. This could somewhat be different from when it's examined. If that if it takes a couple of days. We're interested, is it floating or was it beached? We're also interested in the condition. And actually the reports that come to us, if it's a fresh animal or a semi-fresh animal or of interest, like your beaked whale, we'll make an effort to get out there and necropsy and sample these animals. Again, we try to have, assistance with Alaska Veterinary Pathology Services to get a vet on site, or we'll work with the locals and have some training going on for that to collect the proper samples. We're dealing with live animals. We have entanglements of a stellar sea lion, of a humpback whale. Then we have the recovery of a small, actually that's a bearded seal. And then there's Kathy on a humpback whale that life stranded in Turn, Vietnam a few years back. So we're responding to these live animals, but a lot of what we do are dead ones. And there's just so much value in dead marine mammals, believe it or not. And especially with AVPS, they can get something from anything, really. And the top one here I want to show was a grave from 2019 from Cordova here. But we got we got a stellar sea lion on the right, we got a beluga on the left, and then a humpback on the bottom left there. So we're going out there, and sometimes it's a couple of people, and sometimes there's a team of folks, and sometimes we're getting skin or whiskers, because we're trying to get as much as we can from the animals to come up with an understanding of its health. And sometimes with a necropsy, you can determine cause of death, but usually that's going to be very fresh, and it's usually we don't get a specific answer, but we are learning always about the animal's health. This is a great picture that I love to show, but I'm sad it happened. And it just goes on to show that we had a pilot flying, he landed his plane, saw a beluga there on the 26th. But by the time we heard about it, it was reported a couple of days later in the evening. A picture is from the 29th. So really just in 3 days. And this was September. We had cold weather, freezing temperatures, cold, if not freezing temperatures at the nighttime. And I never ever would have believed in this short amount of time that the animal would have gone from such a fresh animal to one that was advanced decomp. We were able to get a necropsy team. It took took a couple of days after to get there for a helicopter. It was on the point possession side of Cook Inlet, so you can't really get there from a road system. But anyway, we got some good samples, but we would have gotten a whole lot more from this lactating female. So anyway, this tries to emphasize that quick reports means a quicker response, means more information on the health of these animals, or the strandings. What we're doing with these samples, is archiving and people are like, oh, I'm not getting a fast answer, but you heard already about the value of being able to look back on data that was collected 20, 30 years ago, or even 5 years ago. And actually, there's new tests that are being done, new contaminants or new concerns that you're going backwards and looking at it. So I am a big proponent of archiving, and we have worked with hunters in the Chugach region in the past with the Alaska Marine Mammal Tissue Archival Program, because it's looking at really fresh samples to have some of this archived samples to come back and examine at a later date. Histopathology, looking at microbiology, looking at nutrition, parasitology, toxicology, and again, we talked about the harmful algal blooms. That's become a big thing, a concern, and looking at virology. Life history, kind of like this, what I kind of like more is, looking at the ages, looking at the genetics, separations of stocks, looking at the hormones, the diseases and the pregnancies, prey analysis. We have a contract, or we've had a contract with the state for stomach analysis on these animals, so we can find out what they're eating, and we will do your beaked whale for that too. And then we have some education and some other research projects. I don't know why those showed a fate, but anyway, this is what I love too. We have these publications, and you will see, and I just showed more recent ones, showing stuff from 2019, although I had to show the one for the 2015 because that's a very big deal, showing the trends of stranded coconut belugas, which is an endangered species. But we're looking at stellar sea lions, beaked whales, again, some of the beluga stuff that goes on, and we're just getting this on the information, getting it published, getting the information shared. And people, of course, are going to, be able to use this to help with recovery efforts, to understand the animals. There's a list there that you can't see about the trends of beaked whale strandings, too. Yours not included, but it was still good information that we're collecting from and around Alaska. We got so much coastline, we got so much diverse species here that it's just truly valuable. And I'm showing here that, and then what we're dealing with is the warming of Alaska, and you guys have seen it here at the warming of the Gulf. We're talking about lack of ice up north, but, definitely warmer temperatures, and you get the different variations of blobs. You get the one from the 14-15, but then there was also the warming temperatures in 18 and 19 with really no ice in the summer. So we had unusual mortality events for gray whales and for ice seals, meaning that and of course I'm talking about nib species. So people fishing wise, there were loads of birds that were washing up as well too. Very sad and very drastic. And the cause of that for both the gray whales and the ice seals, and that was bearded, ringed, and spotted. That's because women are too far offshore, so we don't know what happened to them, but they didn't come ashore if they died. So our 3 ice seals is lack of food based on environmental changes. They gray whales migrated up to feed after being in having their babies down in Mexico, and they just had a really hard time finding enough food. And that was in 2019 to 23. And the ice seals was very similar. And we had all age classes in our unusual mortality event, but predominantly young pup ones. And then, and then we're working with subsistence harvest and understanding stranded, unhealthy animals is really good to then match with, harvested, healthy animals. And we've had a lot of collaboration and working together with hunters for samples to get some understanding of what, and including with, especially if there was an unusual mortality event, subsistence hunters have provided the necessary samples that help us, work to better understand what is happening to the animal individually, to the population, and it affects the oceans and affects, maybe even the prey species, because if there's no prey, we'll know that's an understanding of what's not happening. And the state of Alaska too, sorry about that. But anyway, this also says, work together. So not sure how my colors change, but yeah, it takes a village, and we're all working together. It's a statewide effort, it's a regional effort, it's a village effort, and it's, individual people working together. And I think we're very excited again to have CRC part of our stranding team in the hopes of, again, collecting more information. And what Raven said too is she already heard from folks in our stranding program, like, there's a lot more strandings in Prince William Sound than there used to be. And I'm not sure that's a reflective of actual numbers or the fact that we actually have people participating in this region. So we're not going to say, oh yeah, it just increased, as much as the fact that now we're getting awareness and information on actually the numbers that are happening. And again, I think, climate change is happening, and this is one tool, one means of actually identifying or collecting information on what's actually happening in the ocean. And individual animals are going to help us. And you might not have fish forest species going out there. You might not find the birds that didn't land on the shore. But if you get a marine mammal, we're hopefully able to get some pieces together to understand what's happening. And I did want to say that there is a booth out there with some marine mammal stranding information that specific to the region here and or for the state. So hopefully you guys can help yourself. But I think that's it.
Thank you.
Yep.
So you probably are guessing, how are we all here and why we're all here. There's a few people that you'll also hear after me tonight. Their slides had a little bit more to do with kind of the Chugach Imaq project. So I wanted to just take a moment to share that CIRC has invited all of these groups from the Prince William Sound who do research here that are related to marine mammals in some capacity, whether that's an ecosystem research and monitoring effort, marine mammal specific research and monitoring effort, or just have a home here in Prince William Sound and do research. And so with the Chugach Imaq initiative, I wanted to just kind of touch base. That's why you kind of saw all these presentations, and then you'll see some people after that kind of are doing more presenting on how it supported this initiative. And so the Chugach Imaq initiative is informing future research and monitoring for marine mammals to support healthy populations, sustain a balanced ecosystem, safeguard Alaska Native subsistence, and implement a marine mammal harvest management plan for the Chugach region to ensure sustainable harvest. This initiative focuses on co-managing 3 prominent species of interest, which are harbor seals, stellar sea lions, and sea otters, but also we're including porpoise because we've identified that those are also an important subsistence species for some of our communities. So to do so, the Chugach Regional Resources Commission has begun the process by creating Indigenous-led biosampling program that we collect data from regular subsistence harvested marine mammals, those healthy marine mammals that people are consuming or using for subsistence activities. We are also understanding the health and well-being of marine mammals, supporting culturally respective scientific research, participating in the NOAA Stranding Network, filling gaps in research and monitoring efforts, and supporting and maintaining the idea of ecosystem balance and coexistence, while also monitoring the population abundance and distribution, initiating a tribally led harvest management plan, and build a better collaborative foundation for co-producing science with regional and federal partners. That's a mouthful. So I want to take a couple steps back to when we started this pilot back in 2021. During this pilot, we initially had the native village of Imaq traditional boundaries be our pilot zone so that we could work with the native village of Imaq and their tribal members to accumulate real-time and historical marine mammal and environmental condition data, do some semi-directed ethnographic interviews, some participant surveys, documented eyewitness accounts, and help become aware of the gaps in research and monitoring needed for proper management. This data, as you can see, has been separated into different categories. So what we did is you can see those maps on the wall over here, which those online can't see, but basically it's the same map that you see on here. And we had the tribal hunters come and take sticky notes and just identify some of these things that you see on here. And then we created this map with that. Basically with that, this activity helps CERC better understand the impacts of climate change to this part of the region, and also identified interested and important areas to the tribal community that CERC can look at to take a better look at and focus on for our program moving forward. So in addition, we've established a standardized biosampling program using well-established previous Alaska Native Harbor Seal Commission and present Aleut Community of St. Paul Indigenous Sentinels Network protocols. And so by kind of combining the two, we created our own program that aims to evaluate the risks to tribal members who have regular contact with marine mammals through subsistence use, and to understand the health and well-being of marine mammal populations in the region. And so here you can see some of our tribal hunters, and then also our new mariculture director, Annette, and our biology laboratory manager, Allie, processing some samples. So with the help of ISN, Indigenous Sentinels Network, we are working towards using this online application to house the harvest and sampling data. This provides a tool for remote communities to participate in sharing real-time data for future and in-season management. This application is privacy protected, both online and mobile apps, and the tribes and individual hunters will have data ownership and control of what's being shared. I'm going to let Hannah come and talk a little bit more about ISN because she does a way better job than I do, and then I'll pop back up afterwards.
Thanks everyone for hanging in there with us. Some of you have heard this before, but if you haven't yet, my name is Hannah Marie Garcia. I work for the Indigenous Sentinels Network as our program director, and I also work at the Aleut Community of St. Paul Islands Tribal Government. But we're collaborating with CERC on developing the tool that can help with all of our partners' data needs. Again, one of the tools in the many toolkits that you hear from across our agency partners that we're all trying to kind of tackle the co-management work in the region with. So ISN is a tool for data storage and management and collection, and our goal is to provide access to software support, training, and tools for environmental monitoring programs happening across the state. And so the work we're doing with CERC is trying to support their data collection management needs and sharing needs, and most importantly, the data sovereignty needs. So a lot of what ISN is working to do is to have all of the processes and tools that we develop be done in a framework that supports the right for Indigenous peoples to own, control, access, and process the data that derives from them. So a lot of our software has the ability to build out data sharing pipelines. A lot of the information that we do collect does need to get out and shared with a wider audience, but having the ability to have multiple levels of access policies or segregated spaces for certain sensitive information, traditional knowledge, be ability to have a flexibility to do that. That's kind of what ISN's main framework is. And if you haven't heard of us before, we were a 2-decade-plus old program. We were formerly the Island Sentinel program because we started on St. Paul Island in the middle of the Bering Sea, and an effort for the tribal government of St. Paul Island to assert co-management of northern fur seals and the harvest on our island. So that is a co-management agreement that's been existent for 2 decades now with NIMS, and we basically have supported data collection needs on that island. We grew to the Aleutians areas and were formerly known as the Bering Watch program in previous years. And then as we've grown across the state and into the Arctic and working across international boundaries now, we're now known as the Indigenous Sentinels Network. And so it really is all of this growth that you hear is our communities across the state and the tribes that I work with across the state, including CERC, are stepping up to address this need to fill our data gaps and really respond to some of the monitoring efforts that we need to track that are occurring across all of our ecosystems. So a lot of the work that I do is kind of focused on the empowerment of communities to lead in the monitoring work, to be good partners with our state and federal agencies, and also to have the ability to integrate Indigenous and traditional knowledge with local expertise and scientific data to really have more informed decision-making and stewardship over our resources. So a lot of the key environmental monitoring issues that we address, sometimes when you do see it being from a community-driven perspective, is data reliability and quality control. So the software has those mechanisms in place for community admins or tribes that have capacity to have staff to do quality control, the software can guide them through that. We also have the ability to bring in collaborators or external reviewers for agencies that want to support communities with the data that they're collecting and the quality of that data. They're really easy to use tools. They're a smartphone app, but they're also, you can call in and have the community admin input data. We can have surveys and polls functionalities that can be shared out on Facebook groups if your communities are mainly active in that area too. So they're really accessible, easy to use. Again, data sovereignty, community ownership of data, and then really thinking about data at the local and regional scales. So a lot of the work I do is on the ground with communities and training, but I'm also having conversations on how we get that data at local levels into broader regional data sets or global data sets, or how we can kind of have those conversations across scales. Beyond our work with CERC, and I just wanted to provide some examples of some of the work that ISN is doing in context of what else you could do with tools that provide this flexibility, is on St. Paul Island. We have the ability to have a research center that we've established where it's all tribally led research on mercury contamination of marine mammals, halibut, and seabirds that our community is harvesting. And so all of the data goes within ISN and is then shared out to our university partners from there. But we have the ability for our community to get trained. He is a community member, he's on staff, and he's also learning the lab technician skills to do this analysis himself. And it's also allowing us to think differently about how we communicate more rapidly around mercury contamination with our community on the island. We're working with Southeast Indigenous Guardians Network and their tribes, and I've also heard there's conversations around sea otter work in Southeast, so potentially maybe some regional collaborations there. The power of some of this data when we talk about communities collecting data or tribes collecting data, or these local level data points, is also the impact it can have on modeling. So the work that we're doing with the National Weather Service and Skipper Science is basically taking an acknowledgement that we're either under predicting or over predicting freezing spray. Those models need to improve. So if you could train communities, get kind of a co-produced protocol in place and an app that can allow them to communicate information effectively. What the fishermen are doing with that program is they basically taking pictures in a standardized way, providing some weather and air depth temperature data. And then we are working with a data librarian called Axiom Data Science to pipe that information over to National Weather Service. And then they're using that fine scale data to help improve model forecasts. This is a 2-year pilot. We're running our second winter pilot this winter. So we'll see how that has played out with some of the modeling. I like that I just pass it over and the modelers can figure out what to do from there. But I like to work with the fishermen to kind of get all the information. From a co-management perspective, to kind of look, we talk a lot about marine, but some terrestrial work that we're doing. Tanana Chiefs Conference is working with ISN to monitor illegal hunting activities on their land. So this kind of dips a little bit into enforcement, but a lot of the issues that they're having is also just time stamping when their trespass sign sits up versus when they see a trespass event. And so TCC and ISN are working on having their field technicians, whenever they're going out to monitor trail conditions or post up a sign, document where that sign was posted, when it was posted, and then compare that to when they get reports in for trespassing. So that's happening in the interior region. We're also working with COERIC and their region to think about coastal erosion, subsistence foods, harvest monitoring, and then of course also working with Aleut Marine Mammal Commission, which I think has also had some collaborations with Kathy Huntington in the room, and biosampling along the Aleutians for training their commissioners on collecting data there. So the software and the network itself has a really wide flexibility to adapt to any monitoring needs. And with CERC specifically, we're really excited to continue to dive deep with the collaborators in the room and community and the hunters to think through what kind of protocols can be done on the ground, what kind of data we want to collect. And so we'll be starting with harbor seal and stellar sea lion and sea otter as well. So these are just some mock-ups around the software and program page that we're starting to develop with Raiden. And you can really just think of this as a Google survey form on steroids. You can do mapping, you can do audio recording, all the things. And so it's really fast and adaptive to CERC's needs. So if we start to develop a protocol with partners and then we want to switch it really quick, all those updates can be done live as long as the hunter has Wi-Fi, and then all the data can be collected offline when they don't have Wi-Fi as well. So this form is really flexible and responsive to any of the needs that we might have as the program develops with CERC. And so we're really excited to keep diving deep with the design and try to figure out as in the coming months how this works, and most importantly, also working with hunters on the ground to figure out the training, quality assurance needs for the program, and then also the data sharing requirements, and go from there to hopefully get some better data gaps filled that can help us all manage the marine mammals in the region. So I'll wrap it there and hand it back to Raven, but just want to say that overall, we're really just focusing on building out the relationships and kind of being that in between, working in the nexus between communities and researchers, and providing that empowerment and support for our communities to also lead in this work and work right alongside the technicians that are collecting that data, so we can all become find innovative solutions for the climate challenges we're facing. So I'll hand it back to Raven.
Yeah, and I noticed that we actually have a couple other slides in here before I get back into it. So we have Jackie with the Subsistence Department, and she's going to kind of talk a little bit about the work that we've done with the pilot back in 2022, kind of organizing the subsistence harvest data.
Great, thanks. Hi, I'm Jackie Keating. I'm with the Subsistence Division at Fish and Game. I'm going to keep it really brief. Thanks for sticking with us. Changing gears a little bit from all the great talks we've heard about natural science and people studying the resources. We're social scientists, so we study people who interact with the resources. And for those of you who are not familiar with who we are, we're essentially the social science research arm of the Department of Fish and Game. We're tasked with scientifically documenting customary and traditional uses of Alaska's fish and wildlife resources. We have a really long history of working collaboratively with CERC and other tribes in the Chugach region and all across the state, particularly in this region in response to the oil spill, documenting the recovery of subsistence ways of life in Cordova, native village of Imaq, and lots of other communities in Prince William Sound and beyond. Our role, we do a lot of quantitative survey work in terms of household harvest surveys, but the surveys that we do don't just look at the amount of animals that are taken. They look at all these other comprehensive, complex factors that affect people's access to subsistence resources. So sharing things that you wouldn't expect to be related to subsistence, maybe off the bat, like things like income, employment, all these factors that come into play to people's ability to be able to harvest and share wild foods and the relationship that has with overall health. We also do qualitative work. This is those really rich ethnographic key respondent interviews where we get to work with people like Raven to identify knowledge holders that we can sit down with and document all this really rich traditional knowledge about the resources and help bring that into the regulatory process. And then we're also an extremely applied research unit. So we work very much with the Board of Fish, the Board of Game, even in the federal subsistence system. There's a photo of us working with CERC at one of their board trainings to help people talk about how to utilize the subsistence data available for their communities in those regulatory processes. So that's a little bit of our role. And then Raven was kind enough to bring us into this project that started in 2021. One of the things we did was come to a workshop here in Cordova and redesigned the marine mammal harvest survey that used to be deployed here up until about 2008. We got to sit down with a lot of the local hunters and discuss what really mattered to people in terms of what we were asking about in that survey. We created a new survey form, and then eventually we're going to find funding to help deploy that survey again. What you see over here is all the years that we have data available for the different communities in the Chugach. If you see that's a marine mammal harvest survey where we just went and asked folks about harvesting and sharing marine mammals. If you see a C, that's a comprehensive harvest survey. That's where we go ask folks about everything. They take about an hour, but it's a really comprehensive picture of resource use and sharing. So what I'll highlight briefly is this is the years that we have that survey data available for all of the resources. We're working really hard to update those. We just did Port Graham this past winter, and then we're working with Raven and CERC and NBE to piece funding together to finally update Cordova again. It's been 10 years and counting since we've done that. So it's time to update all of that information. Just wanted to share a little bit of the work that we've done in the region. I mentioned the Port Graham project. We're also working with CERC's wildlife biologist, Dustin, to do a study about moose in Port Graham. As I mentioned, we're hoping to piece together funding to update subsistence information here in Cordova. So hopefully in the next year or so, you'll see some outreach from NV about that happening. We'll be looking to hire local research assistants to help us with that work. Some recent publications, one of the things we partnered with Raven on is pulling all the available marine harvest data that we have for the region and putting it in one place, which includes qualitative data. So we went through all the interviews that had been conducted by the division here in the past 4 decades and pulled anything related to marine mammals and sorted it. So we've got a special publication where all that information is readily accessible. Not related to marine mammals, but we also worked with CERC doing a clam recovery project in Chugach, a very community-informed project. So we've got a recent publication on that. And then just wanted to put a quick plug out. Many of you probably know Board of Fish is happening here in December. We, as a division, exist to help people utilize subsistence data. So if there are proposals of interest to you and you want to know how to speak about the importance of subsistence in the community, we're here to talk about how to utilize that information. That's all I got.
And I think we have Marine Mammal Commission up next. They're here to speak on being one of the main funders for our pilot and just kind of like what their role is. Thanks for being here today. Thanks, Jackie.
Hi everyone, I'm Jackie Schaff and I'm here with Vicki Cornish in the back. We're with the Marine Mammal Commission. Really briefly, we're a little bit different from some of the other federal agencies that you just heard from. So we're an independent agency that was established under the Marine Mammal Protection Act. And our goal is to provide oversight of marine mammals policies and programs carried out by other federal agencies. So unlike NOAA Fisheries or U.S. Fish and Wildlife that you heard of that have management authority over marine mammals in Alaska and in the U.S., we're non-regulatory. Also, unlike a lot of the different groups that you've been hearing from, we don't really do a lot of on-the-ground science and monitoring efforts, but we heavily rely on all the work that like a lot of the groups have been presenting on for our work in the policy side. We're also based in DC, so sometimes we kind of have this national level, but we really like working with CERC and others and being able to take what's going on at the regional level back to the national level too. So really quickly what that means to be an oversight agency, we'll provide recommendations on federal agency action. So this can look like something when Ben just mentioned that there's sea otter stock assessments done. Those will go out for a public comment period, and during that time, the Marine Mammal Commission might provide recommendations on things to add to those. For example, we bring people together to solve complex problems. So this little image on the right kind of depicts that we really see ourselves working at the intersection of science and policy. So we try to bring people together. We have annual meetings, we held workshops and different listening sessions. Our big role, especially being based in DC, is that we brief Congress on marine mammal issues. And so what that can look like is, again, kind of taking what we're hearing at the regional level back to Congress when we're talking about things like that bottom bullet on protecting subsistence hunting rights and supporting co-management. The Alaska delegation is obviously really aware of those issues, but we can help raise those issues to other regions, especially when it comes to things like appropriations and getting funding to this kind of work. And then we also provide funding via a small grants program. So as Raven was just talking about, the Chugach Imaq pilot project was partly funded by this grants program. So as we're kind of looking into the future of how we can continue to work with the groups here today, one big way is just to continue supporting co-producing science that's used for co-management efforts. We really rely on both Western science and other forms of knowledge, Indigenous and traditional knowledge in the work that we do. So including Indigenous knowledge in our work that I just showed on the previous slide is one way that we do that. And via this grants program and future funding opportunities to help keep this work going. So often when we're in a region and we're hearing about priorities, we can bring that back to think about what would be a good topic for our grants program for following years. We also do a lot of communication. We have some flyers out back, so whether that be doing something here like tonight for the public or taking those flyers to Congress and making one specific to different regional needs that we hear about. And then finally, we are really lucky to work with Alaska Sea Grant. They have a wonderful summer internship program, and this last summer we were able to help fund an intern to work with Raven and CERC So we're trying to keep that going every summer and working to provide opportunities for students and early career folks to get their foot in the door when it comes to doing this kind of work in the future. So that's all I have, just short and sweet, but thanks everyone for sticking with it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I will kind of push through these next couple of slides. I really want us to take a quick peek at like what the future is going to look like, and that's where this Chugach, I put the wrong slide up there, the Chugach Imaq Research Collaborative is, and that's what we're all here for as these different groups in the room today. And so what we're looking at is coming up with a collaborative approach to working with like the Stranding Network up in the top right, and then we have our Alaskan Native Hunters here, or sorry, left, and then bottom left. And then we've got our subsistence use up here by Native users, and then we've got our surveys and different techniques used for surveys there. We have our ecosystem-wide approach here that involves our mariculture and sea otter health lovers over there. And then we've also got like our lab facility and expanding our laboratory work over at the Alutiiq Pride Marine Institute by analyzing samples, and then hopefully at some point with building our capacity, being able to analyze samples for others within the state as well. And so I'll kind of miss the rest of the slides because it's a little bit more of reiterating what people have already talked about, but that's basically why we're all here, is to kind of come together, see where gaps are, how can we fill gaps, and ultimately continue collaboration throughout the region. So thank you all for coming, and I really appreciate you guys holding strong in this hour and a half and a pocket change of time presentation. I hope you all appreciate what we shared. So thanks.
Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you Raven and everybody who presented. And please sign the sign-in sheet on your way out just so we can track numbers of everybody that we had here. And yeah, thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Matt.
Good job.
Yeah,
So,
extra long. Oh, let me grab that.
I'll end this just a second. End the session.